Hello and welcome to day 6 of the Top Order Podcast's review of the 2023 Cricket World Cup. We've had a bumper day with 2 games on the scorecards. It's been 1,300 runs, 500s, a bounce-back performance from England, the highest World Cup run chase, successful World Cup run chase in history from Pakistan. We'll have all that for you and much, much more coming back after this. Raj, view behind the curtain. It's been the Pakistan game and against Sri Lanka is the one that I've focused on, so I haven't really seen much of this England-Sri Lanka. Who did they play?
Bangladesh.
Played Bangladesh. It's all getting a bit much for me these early mornings, up at 5 o'clock to try and watch the highlights. We're doing very, very well, I think, listeners, to even be around covering this. But as I said, it's been tricky to try and focus on both games, so I've pretty much skipped out of this England game. I'm going to say they needed this performance. A lot of the coverage in these early parts of this build-up to this game was all about the dodgy Dharamasala outfield, but also about how England really needed to bounce back after a really crushing defeat against New Zealand. I'll mention that as much as I can until things start to turn sour for New Zealand, which I'm sure they will at some point in this tournament. But it really was, at least on paper, Raj, the performance that England needed, a big, big win against Bangladesh.
Yep, commanding performance. They were superior in all facets of the game. Starting with the batting, top 3 were beautiful. Dawid Malan's innings was a real cracker if you can get onto the highlights and watch that, or even better, the full innings. If you can watch that full innings, it is definitely something great to watch. It's an interesting one because the pitch, it looked beautiful, even placed, flat. Anything short of a good length, it just sort of sat up and was punished. The margin of error was just so small, and Bangladesh just bowled generally too short to those English batsmen, and they just sat on the back foot and punished them. When you look at it from the other side of the coin, when England bowled, they tended to bowl a lot fuller, and they found the right length for the speeds that they were bowling. And it was almost opposite in that England found it really easy with a harder, newer ball and struggled towards the end, where Bangladesh bowled some really good off-pace sort of change-ups at the end of their innings, probably saved them from having to chase over 400 versus, the chase was probably almost done within the first sort of 10-15 overs for the Bangladeshis, because they lost those wickets very early.
Yeah. Talk to me a bit about Malan, and I know we sort of know all about Root, and I mean I think we should know about Malan by now, but I think a lot of the talk when you look at that Bairstow and Malan partnership in general, not just in this game, but Bairstow is seen as the aggressor. We've had Jason Roy up there as the aggressor. Malan just kind of seems like he goes about his business. But I think the impressive part about him, at least today on the scorecard and the very small parts that I've watched, is the way he is able to lift that tempo and really sort of elevate things. It seemed like he did that particularly once he sort of got going and once he got to 100. And even the start of his innings, I'm always very impressed just the way he hits through that offside.
Yeah, he looks beautiful with all of his classical, the whole Stephen Fleming classical off-drive sort of stuff there, but he's got a whole heap of power. The real impressive thing about a lot of these innings which are going over 300 is the tempo of the partnership. You're not having one guy go out there and smash at 200 strike rate and the other guy just falling behind with an 80 strike rate getting to the end of the innings. You're seeing both of them go at 100, not having to cover for the other batsman, and it just makes it easy for the batsmen and extremely hard for the bowlers. They just don't know where to bowl. Bairstow looked controlled. Sometimes he does get a little bit punchy with his shot play, but he looked controlled. So did Malan, and then Joe Root coming in at number 3 once that platform was laid he's just one of the best consolidators of a platform like that you can find, and he scored at 120 strike rate, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like he is just scoring at a runner ball, just flowing with his stroke making. But that you mentioned Malan sort of accelerating towards the end. I think once he got to his 100, you saw him really sort of change into that 2020 persona, and he was really going for the boundaries. And look, like I said, the pitch was flat. It was great to bat on, and when somebody's in like that on that kind of wicket, it's just hard to stop them.
The thing that I've noticed so much in this World Cup, kind of as we've been going, and you mentioned it there with partnerships, you've got to take wickets in this World Cup. I mean, obviously you need to take them in all facets of the game, but I think the one, people talk about you've got to take wickets up front, and then people talk about you've got to bowl well at the death. I think the underrated part is that what I've seen so far in this World Cup is that if you're not taking wickets in the middle as well, it's really, really crucial, because just the way these teams and the players these days are able to build partnerships. We'll get onto it when we get onto the second game as well. But yeah, just if you do not take wickets in this World Cup, basically anywhere up and down the order, if people are able to build partnerships, they score at ease. They score at 6 runs and over with absolute ease. So yeah.
The old adage used to be if you get to whatever you get to at 150, you double. Sorry, whatever you get to at 30 overs, you double it, right? Now it's whatever you get to at 30 overs, you add 200, 250 on top of it if you've got wickets in hand. And that's why you're seeing 350 scored regularly here. If you get to 30 overs with wickets in hand and a platform laid with a batting lineup that bats to 9 or 10, you really just have an absolutely rocket ship. You're on a rocket ship all the way to 300, 400 runs.
But then in saying that, England didn't do that. They sort of struggled at the end there. I think they lost 7 for 68, pretty much off the final 10 and a few balls there. What's going on there? I mean, obviously a big performance from England, 364. That they'll look at this and think, much like Baldy was asking me yesterday about New Zealand's performance against the Netherlands. I'm sure they'll look at this and think, on paper at least, it's pretty much the perfect performance. But I don't think they'll be that thrilled about the way they finished that innings, because it could have easily gone over 400, right?
Yeah, I think it's actually an interesting way to look at it. I think if you're England, you go, good, there is some stuff that we can improve on there, and that's how we closed the innings. The first sort of 30, 35 overs, 40 overs of that innings were sublime. But I think it would be rude not to say that Bangladesh bowled incredibly well in that last sort of 12, 10 overs. The ball that Liam Livingstone got, I don't know if anyone can go and see it, the first ball he got, left arm over the wicket to him, just knocked his off pole out of the ground, or not out of the ground, but it should have if it was a little bit more water in the stump holes. But it was a beautiful ball to get first up, and that sort of started the rot a little bit. If Liam Livingstone had got in there and faced 20, 30 balls, I think that the score would have been closer to 400, if not over it. But there was great changes of pace. They found their length a little bit better, and also, as I said, the ball got a bit softer. England seemed to struggle a little bit with that as well.
And we'll move on to the bowling. England made a change to their lineup, left out an all-rounder, Moeen Ali, brought in Reece Topley. Seemed like that paid dividends pretty quickly in the Bangladesh innings.
Yeah, Reece Topley was incredible. The other seamers, I think, struggled a little bit. This pitch just had an incredibly small margin for error as a pace bowler. You needed to hit that length just full of a length at pace. Reece Topley found it beautifully, and if you look at the dismissals between the two innings, a lot of the England ones were on the back foot or having a hit towards the end, whereas the Bangladeshi wickets were people coming forward, nicking it or pushing it to the point where a couple of Reece Topley's wickets were taken. But yeah, it was a good performance all round. Mark Wood was good as well. I don't think it was quite his pitch. The pitch didn't have a incredible amount of pace in it, but he bowled really well, restricting runs, and he was hard to get away. And then Adil Rashid, his spin bowling, and Liam Livingstone, they just seemed to find a much better length than the Bangladeshis, and they were able to really rip the ball towards the end of the day. There was a lot more turn. Adil Rashid got a beautiful wrong and through the gate to Mahdi Hassan there, which I think that you'll want to go back and have a look at, Stu, if you haven't seen it already. But I think it was an all-round performance with the ball. Great performance with the bat, all-round performance with the ball. I think they'll be much happier 4 or 5 days on from their first game.
Interesting you mentioned Wood. He was someone that I was sort of at least looking for on the scorecard because certainly after the game that we've seen afterwards, this Pakistan-Sri Lanka game that we'll talk about shortly, it seems so extreme pace, has been something that has been quite critical in ODI cricket and in T20 cricket. But it seems at the moment that they're sort of going the distance. So England will be very pleased, I would have thought, to see, as you say, Mark Wood going for only 29 off his 10 overs.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because this is a day game, right, which I don't think is representative of how the dew factor may assist these faster bowlers at night. The way I described it wasn't really his pitch. Anything short of a length was really, it just sat up and asked to be hit, even at pace. So he bowled a good line and length, and that's a great bow to have, string to his bow to have, to be able to bowl like that if it's not quite his type of wicket.
Anything else you'd like to add before we move on to the next game?
No, not at all. I think this kind of performance from England is the one that the world needs to sort of be scared of. If they could string these together on a regular basis where they've just completely outclassed their opposition with the bat and with the ball, many teams are going to find it hard to beat them.
Yeah, and Afghanistan for them next, so they'll be thinking at least that they'll be 2-1 after that game and sort of right back in the hunt for those semi-final spots. We'll move on to Pakistan, Sri Lanka now. A game filled with runs, almost 700 runs. I think it was the biggest aggregate between these two sides, is something that I've read. Also, the highest World Cup run chase. We finally had a close game, at least on paper. I'm not so sure from the last couple of hours that I've watched that it was quite as close as you might think once Rizwan and Abdullah Shafique and then Shakil kind of got in the mix. But yeah, what are your takeaways, at least, Raj, from looking at that scorecard? What are the first things that stand out to you?
Well, the first thing is I want to redirect the question to you, actually, and I'm looking at that score. 344 for 9. It was chased down with 8 or 10 balls remaining by Pakistan, but for only 4 wickets down. And knowing I think this was the same ground that Sri Lanka played South Africa on, high scoring game. They've got 344, but is that actually below par on this wicket in this 400 World Cup tournament?
Well, I think it goes back to what I was saying before about you've got to take wickets. I think as you said, you can just score runs so easily on grounds like this where the pitch is really good, it's flat. There's not a lot in it for seamers. There's not a lot in it for pace or for spin. It didn't turn a huge amount for anyone. And so these players these days, they're just too good. If you can't take wickets, there's quality up and down every single lineup, and the way that they can build runs in little 10 over patches. So if you look at Sri Lanka, they scored. You often, as we said, we often talk about hitting out at the start in that first power play or going big at the end. Sri Lanka got 102 for 1 off between the overs 21 and 30. Players, as soon as you have a partnership building, things can just kick off and elevate very, very quickly. And the way Kusal Mendis, he did it against South Africa, 122 off 77 balls. He hits the ball all around the ground, paces, they bowl to him, anything. He's just looking for anything short, anything with any amount of width. Some of the balls he was cutting, there's, as you say, very, very small margin for error. And he's able to just get on the back foot, smash it behind point. And then, spinners come on and he's able to take them to all different parts of the ground as well. So, yeah, very, very impressive batting side of things from Sri Lanka. But, I mentioned the way that they were 102 for 1 off their, in that 10 over period. They then, in the final 20, only scored 115 for 6. So, they could have, again, easily gone over 400 and it would have made it a much tougher chase for Pakistan.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. So at the fall of the 5th wicket there, De Silva, they were, 294 for 5 after 41. So they've only scored about 50 runs in that last 9 overs there. What about the the Pakistani bowlers? Any standouts for you there?
I didn't see a huge amount of the Pakistan bowling. To be fair, I've seen the highlights of the wickets and things. I think the key thing really that I will say this and saying that I haven't seen a huge amount of that bowling. What they do possess is the ability to pick up wickets at all different parts in that bowling attack. I think probably they'll be a little bit concerned about Shadab Khan. The parts that I have seen of his bowling hasn't been quite as useful and quite as controlled as I normally feel like he is. But those three seamers, even missing Naseem Shah, the fact that Hassan Ali can come in and pick up some wickets. Harris Rauf is always a danger to pick up wickets at any point in the innings. He can come in and pick up, in the middle overs and pick up a wicket, which, stems that run rate. And, we know what Shaheen Shah Afridi can do. So, yeah, I think from the Sri Lankan batting part of things, I do want to just shout out Sadeera Samarawickrama, someone I haven't seen a huge amount of, to be fair, before this, but scores his first ODI 100. And again, someone who just played all around the ground. He ran down the wicket and hit a six really quite late in his innings, actually. 6 over extra cover that was just beautiful. You talked to me about going back and watching the highlights of a ball through the gate. I think you would certainly enjoy the step down the wicket to the spinner and donk them over wide extra cover. A shot that I've known you for and many times before.
If you're too kind, I'm going to start blushing. If you were the Sri Lankan coach and you've seen the South African game and you've seen this game, are you happy with the improvement? What is your sort of assessment on the second game of the tournament in terms of improvement?
I think you're wrapped with it with big parts of the batting. I think you're pretty disappointed and searching for answers really with the bowling. So, as we move to, I guess, that part of the innings, they pick up a couple of early wickets. Madhushankar gets Babar Azam and gets Imam. I think you're thinking you're right on top there. You've got a big score on the board, but they're really struggling to find not just 5 bowlers, but 4 bowlers at the moment. Patirana is really, really struggling. Part of that I think is down to the way that pace, and extreme pace is being able to be dealt with these days. The fact that you can, if there's any width or, any error, any margin for error, as you say, it's very, very easy to get the pace away on good wickets. But I think a lot of that is down to him. He bowled all over the place. A lot of wides, a lot of balls. He's trying a lot of different things. And look, lengths just all over the place, lines all over the place. He's got to be a key bowler for them. Theekshana came back in this game and, added a bit more control. Him and Wellalage, look, actually I thought bowled reasonably well, but still because of the way that everyone else was leaking runs. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there wouldn't be many sides in a World Cup or in even, just general ODIs these days that have scored 300 in consecutive games and lost. As I said at the start, it on paper this looks like quite a close game, but for the last 20 overs that I was watching, Pakistan were in total control of that run rate.
And I guess, maybe we're being a bit harsh. Any side in the world would struggle to replace someone like Kasaranga. They're missing him. So, instead of looking for maybe 7 overs, to fill in 7 overs of their 50, they're probably looking to fill in about 15 at the moment with him missing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And look, I've got to give Pakistan a huge amount of credit as well. They made a change. Fakhar Zaman left out of the side. And Abdullah Shafique comes in, scores, a very, very impressive 100. He was the one that kind of kept the momentum going while Rizwan was getting in. And then Rizwan just sort of, as soon as he was in, he managed that innings. You're not going to see very many better innings in terms of management and run rate. And every time it felt like they needed a boundary, he just came up with one. He really accelerated picked up the pace towards the end of the innings, even though he was suffering from Mark Richardson-like cramps. Very, very, very entertaining. at a few different points. Again, ran down the wicket, smashed one over wide mid off for six, and then just arching back in agony. Yeah, I love those moments as a fan. Obviously, not very very fun for the batter, but yeah. A special innings from him, and to break a record chase, it's I think they'll be pretty stoked with how that game's gone.
Yeah, I think so too. And the thing that really sort of stands out to me if I look at cricket in general is how often we're seeing controlled run chases of 6.5, 7 runs and over, whereas previously that you're dashing from the beginning and hoping to have some luck. But no, really controlled from what I've seen. The little the last sort of 10, 12 overs that I did see, real controlled chase towards the end there by Pakistan. They never looked like losing that. And that would be a concern for me as the Sri Lankans. That's why I kind of asked that question. When you're scoring 350 with ease, will you put that in quote marks, with ease?
Yeah.
And then just to have them chase down or have scores put on that are just well in excess of that is a bit of a concern and something they'll have to look at.
Oh, I think it's going to be a big problem for them. I don't know where they find the answers really, because if Patirana is going to continue to struggle, then they just don't have the strike power, I don't think, to take those wickets. And yeah, I mean, you talk about control there. Pakistan from 21 to 30, they scored 72 runs. From 31 to 40, they scored 89 for the loss of only one wicket. And then they're left only needing 74 off the final 10, and they cruised that. They managed that. When someone bowled a good over, they were just milking them for ones, and then they were able to find the boundaries wherever they can. So yeah, look, I mean, I guess we've seen 2 games today, probably the results we expected actually, and maybe even early on in this tournament, we're starting to see some of these top sides start to put a bit of a gap between. Maybe the top 6 sides are going to become apparent quicker than we thought. Even though I still feel like everyone can kind of beat each other on their day. The way that the results are going, we have not yet seen an upset or even really close to an upset so far in this tournament. Even though yes, only week 1.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that's one of the things when we're trying to sort of analyse these games. It's interesting because they have sort of gone how we thought they would go. Those 6 teams, as you say, will become apparent, I feel, very, very quickly through the first third of the tournament. And then it will be an interesting shootout for fourth spot.
Absolutely, and so for these 2 sides, Pakistan plays India next game, which is going to be absolutely massive on all number of levels. Sri Lanka have Australia, so it doesn't get much easier for them. Trying to find some answers with that bowling attack, and England play Afghanistan, as we mentioned. Bangladesh play New Zealand, which is obviously very much of interest to us, and overnight, we have India versus Afghanistan. So we'll be back to bring you that game tomorrow morning. Sounds like Shubman Gill is still struggling with dengue fever. It sounds like he might be out for a few more games, may even miss that Pakistan game. Yeah, but it didn't seem like it had too much of an impact on that Indian lineup, although obviously they didn't start as well as they would like. But we will not worry about trying to predict the outcome of that game. It won't be long before we're back in the saddle again. Raj and Baldy tomorrow morning to preview or to review that game. Raj, it's been a pleasure joining you once again this morning, and we'll be back tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great day.